Okay, this is the after the playthrough of the game Nosferatu. I had said that I was gonna give a review on it. Now, you gotta understand, this is just a review from me. You know, if you wanna try the game out, then be my guest. If you know you enjoy the game or whatever, then like I say, this is just my personal review. You know, some opinions on the game after I had played through it a billion times. But this is the review that I had promised about Nosferatu. Now, Nosferatu is it's a game based on it's not even based on a German film. It's based on the vampire Nosferatu, and neither one of them have anything in common. It's not similar at all. The game is completely different from the movie. So the game is in a league of its own, and the game was actually developed by a Japanese company named SETA, which is SETA. I don't even know if this company is in business anymore. But this game came out around 1990, around 1990. It came out in the 90s, 1995, I would say the least. And the main character's name is Cal. Now, in this game, you play as Cal. He's supposed to be the main protagonist. And he's trying to save his girlfriend from the grips of Nosferatu. And Nosferatu's purpose for kidnapping her is pretty much to consume her blood. That's it. So it's another one of these video games where you have to save the so-called damsel in distress. Now, the game starts out with good intentions, and what would probably get you is the intro. The intro will have you thinking, wow, this game is going to be awesome. You know, it's going to be a lot of action in it. From the first playthrough, you would kind of get this feeling that this is going to be a fighting game, you know, a beat 'em up, just in a horror more element to it. And apparently, like, after the second, third, fourth stage, you start realizing that it leaves behind everything that could have made it different, and it turns into a platformer. It's almost like the developers didn't know whether they wanted to make a platformer, or whether they wanted to make a fighting game, or whether they wanted to make a beat 'em up. So they just took all three and tried to merge them together. Now, at first it seems like it's a good idea to do so, until you really start getting down to like the real heart of the game. And after a while, it becomes extremely tiresome, especially if you play it on hard mode like I did, which was crazy. I tried to play it on hard mode to give myself a little bit of a challenge. Well, it turns out that if you play on hard mode, you get the bad ending to the game. There's actually 3 different endings to the game. Hard mode, you get the bad ending, which is, I don't even understand why you would get the bad ending. You should get the greatest ending they can give you if you play it on the hardest difficulty level. But apparently with this company, they believe that hard mode gives you the bad ending, and normal mode gives you the good ending, and easy mode, it gives you an ending, but it tells you something that you would see at the end of Street Fighter 2. You know, if you don't beat it on 4 stars or higher, it'll say try the next challenge. So there's really no need to beat it on easy mode, and there's really no need to beat it on hard mode. You can just play the game on normal mode and get the perfect ending, and that's it. Now another thing that I can say that makes Nosferatu stand out is that it is the first game I've seen where you actually go up against everything with your fist, and this is including a vampire and a couple of monsters such as Frankenstein and even a giant golem. So the game stands out when it comes to originality, but it only stands out in originality when it comes to the boss fights. You know, like, this is a game that has you fighting a ghost with your bare fist. This is a game that has you fighting a werewolf with your bare fist. So it stands out with originality, but it doesn't give you that same, feeling that, you want to continue to play this game. When you get to a boss fight, that's when the good part of the game starts to kick in. But through the platforming and trying to get from this stage and this part of the stage, it starts to become kind of tiresome, because 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get killed by an enemy. Majority of the time you're going to get killed by the stage traps, and there are just ridiculous amounts of traps on this game, especially when you start to get to the final stages. And when I say stages, I mean stages. The final stages, if I'm not mistaken, is split up into like 4 different areas. It's not even 2. It's 4 different areas, and depending on which one you choose is depending on how many traps you're gonna have to avoid, how many cheap shots you're gonna have to avoid, and how many beginner traps you're gonna have to avoid. And I mean, after a while, it starts to become tedious. It starts to fall short, because your enjoyment of the game, it really starts to wear thin after a while. Another thing to say about this game is that you have to realize this was made by a Japanese company. And I mean, I don't know if you played an American game and a Japanese game before, but they are completely different. An American version of Nosferatu would be easy as crap. A Japanese version of Nosferatu would be like playing on hard mode. So yeah, the game originally was created by Japanese developers. I don't know if there's an American version for it. After playing this version, do I really care? Not really, because if they're both the same in story and only different in challenge, there really wouldn't be any point to playing, both of them. You could just pick your poison, choose one. Now, one thing that I despise about this game, and I cannot stress this enough, is the controls on this game are extremely sluggish. They are extremely sluggish. The main character, Cal, cannot, when you tap the attack button on your controller, it attacks, but it only attacks when he's in a certain animation. When he's in a certain form. When he's in a form, 2 punch, that's when you're allowed to punch. You can't just tap the attack key and automatically he strikes an opponent. It doesn't work that way on this. For some reason, the game developers thought that it would be a wise idea to make it to where he has to have both of his fists up in order for you to start striking any opponent. Not only does this causes you to fail in a number of attacks that you could accomplish in landing, it also allows the AI to get in some of the most cheapest shots you've ever seen, because you have a delay on your attack. When it comes to jumping, your jumping is off balance. It really is. When you try, 9 times out of 10, when you try to jump over something, it's not really a jump. It's more like a hop. You know, it gets to the point to where after a while you kind of start to lose focus of the strategy behind the fighting mechanics that they have on here, because the controls are not as they're not as crisp as they could be. It's almost like they tried to, rush it together before it was released, and it did not work. It did not work in any good favor at all. The graphics on the game, however, see, that's what gets you. The graphics on the game are awesome. For this time and for the console, that it was on, for the technology that it was running off of at the time, the graphics are awesome looking. There's nothing wrong with these graphics at all, and that's what gets you. That's what draws you into making you think, wow, this game is gonna be perfect. Until you start playing it, then you start seeing flaw after flaw after flaw after flaw. Now, don't get me wrong, the entire game isn't horrible, but it's not. I put it like this: it doesn't really leave a good lasting impression on you after you complete it. You kind of feel like they could have put more to, like, giving you something at the last battle to, like, really remember the game. Like this epic, showdown between you and, the main, enemy, Nosferatu, like the two of you just duking it out. It falls short of that. At the end of the game, when you finally reach Nosferatu, he only has really 3 attacks, and they're some of the most lamest attacks you've ever seen. They're so cheap. You can't do dash attacks on this game. Well, not dash attacks, but shoulder tackles. You can never get off a shoulder tackle on Nosferatu. He will automatically cancel out your shoulder tackle, grab you, and choke you in the air. If he doesn't choke you, then he will kick you or punch you down, lift you up with telekinesis, and slam you on the ground. Now, there is a way that I found out after countless times of going against this character. There is a way that you can shake yourself free of his grasp by by tapping left and right repeatedly at the same time you're tapping the attack button. You can kind of break free of his grip. His second attack would be where he chokes you, lifts you up into the air, drops you down. Then he has a third attack where he transforms into a bat, and he swoops down and kicks you. Now, the thing is that even though they programmed it to where you can kick him while he's transformed into a bat, it does absolutely no damage. So it's kind of like, what was the point of you even programming the ability for me to kick this character, and it does nothing? And the kick, not to mention the jump kick that Cal does, you will not even use it through the game. I swear you won't. You won't even use it. It does no damage to Nosferatu, okay? It does. It is so slow to pull off that you have to be 100% accurate. You have to be 100% in perfect alignment with the character and Cal that you're going up against. Regardless of who it is, most opponents, most enemies, creatures, monsters, whatever you want to call them, the majority of them that you go up against, you're gonna have to punch. That's his, according to his slide attack, his shoulder tackle, you're pretty much gonna be punching your way through the entire game. Don't even attempt to do, any strategies that are just, make you feel like, oh, you're such a strong, cool main protagonist that you're playing as, this guy is just, oh, he's a force to be reckoned with. That's so far from the truth. After a while, you will literally start to care less and less and less and less about this main protagonist that they have on here, due to so many failures, due to so many times you're getting killed by trap after trap after trap. It's ridiculous. Not to mention when you go against a golem outside of the castle, he has this move where he fires his arm at you, and even though you're knocked on the ground, he can still fire his arm out at you and hit you while you're on the ground, defenseless. And there's nothing you can do about this except take the hit. Another thing is that not only do you have to worry about taking damage from the enemies, you also have to worry about this silly little another thing that annoyed me through the playthrough is that for some reason the game developers thought it would be hilarious to have the main character literally run into a wall and lose a very valuable item in the game, which is a crystal. And the crystals in the game are almost like your upgrade points. The more crystals you get in the game, the stronger you get, the more combos you can pull off. I didn't find this out until later on in the gameplay, but if you have 6 crystals, you'll probably be able to pull off 3 punches, a gut punch, and then a round kick or something, because it varies depending on how many crystals you have in your possession. It's depending on how many what kind of combo you can do. Now, the downfall to this is that you lose crystals in some of the most idiotic ways. Running into a wall, you'll lose a crystal. If you get hit by an opponent, you lose a crystal. If you fall on the ground, if you fall from a high area and you don't die in the process, you lose a crystal. So, and half the time you can't help but to run into a wall, because the game designers thought it would be hilarious to have Cal slide after you stop running. He does this little slide where it comes in handy when you're fighting the ghost or the mist, as some people have called it on forums. It does good to get behind, that boss in that fight, but it's only for that boss. Throughout the entire game, every time you dash, every time you run forward, you'll slide. And this slide, 9 times out of 10, is going to have you either run face first and impale yourself on some spikes coming out of the wall, or A, they're going to cause you to run into an oncoming opponent or enemy, or they're going to cause you to fall off of a part of the stage and kill yourself. It was really no need for that at all. Not to mention, half of the characters on this game you can't even punch. Some of them, you can punch them, but you can't punch them like you should be able to. It doesn't really make you feel like the character you're playing as can go up against these enemies that they're put up against. For example, they have an enemy, they have the Beholder, which is another enemy on the game, a one-eyed creature. The only way that you're capable of punching this enemy and defeating it is if you're outside of its attack range. If you're in its attack range, you can't go toe-to-toe with it like you could in an average beat-em-up game, such as Final Fight or Streets of Rage. So when it boils down to, the game starts off good. The game, I can see where they was kind of going. The game plays like Prince of Persia, except it has, there's no weapons in the game. You just fight everything with your fist. The boss battles are awesome in the game, all except when it gets to Nosferatu, and it's kind of watered down. It don't really leave you with that epic feeling like you've accomplished anything. It is one of those games that plays on the whole saving the damsel in distress routine that has been done so many times. Their horse has been beat the hell out of, to the point to where I don't even think it has skin on it anymore. I believe it's just a bunch of bones and dust. But if I was going to give this game a rating, which I am, I would have to give this rating. I would have to give this game a rating. I would say, out of 10, I would have to give it a 7 out of 10. And the reason that is but basically this is due to the originality of what they was going for. You know that, like, not trying to copy Castlevania. The character went toe to toe, bare knuckle, fighting monsters like Frankenstein with his bare fist. He's fighting Nosferatu, which is a vampire, with his bare fist. He fights a werewolf with his bare fist. He even fights a golem made out of rock. If you don't know what a golem is, it's a elemental creature. You could call it a creature. Some people call it an elemental because it's an earth. Is, I would say, guardian made from rock due to magic. But anyway, he went up against one of these with his bare fist. Like, you don't really see anything like that, out of the blue. So it gets that score for originality. But that's enough about this game. That's my thoughts and opinion about it. But yeah, I would give this game a 7 out of 10 for originality only. But can I give it a higher score than that? No. Sluggish controls. You have an unbalanced character. You have so many things that's wrong with this. So that's it for this review.